Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the Executive Director for the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and it's my pleasure to be with you here today for today's webinar. This is the last in our series of Managers Monday, and it's Leveraging WIOA Title II Funds with Other Resources. I just want to remind you all that the certificate for today's webinar will come to you from the Zoom platform with CEU verification, but that comes within 24 hours directly from Zoom. As well, we give 50+ webinars that are delivered annually on trending topics. The idea of the webinars is really to take the professional development outside of the brick and mortar of the conference out to anybody that can attend. It's free to our members, and that's thanks to our sponsorship. So I want to stop right here and take a minute to thank Dan Griffith of Essential Education. I'm going to give him a minute to speak in just a couple slides down, but I want to reference that because without their generous sponsorship, this webinar would not be possible. So this is our fifth and final Managers Mondays. As you can see, we covered a variety of topics from WIOA Basics to NRS, Basic Adult Education Structure and Activities, IET and Career Pathways. So really exciting. Within 2 weeks, we'll have a module that'll have all 5 of these webinars as one that you can view, and that will be online at coaib.org. I also want to remind you all that you can find this webinar and others at our Adult Educators Repository. It's free to access this. It's created by and for our members, so there's lots of great material out there, and you can upload material as well. You just need your membership number to do so. This is generously sponsored by Essential Education as well. On a completely different note, we have COAIB Board of Directors leadership opportunities. And what's really exciting about this is that there's a lot of opportunities coming up. So Vice President for Membership, Regional Rep for Regions 2, 4, and 6. And not listed on here, but what will be opening up is our President-elect position. The reason that's not listed is you'd have to be a current member of the board in an elected position or have served in an elected position. So it really is pulling from the board for that position. But the other 4, VP, Region 2, 4, and 6 positions are open. If you're interested in nominating someone or serving, go to coaib.org for more details. As well, we have 6 different awards, 3 of which are $10,000 each. So Teacher of the Year, Administrator of the Year, and Adult Learner of the Year. And I always am just amazed because I feel like there are, well, we know there's 55,000 plus adult teachers out there, adult learners, teachers that are teaching adult learners, but there's 1.5 million adult learners. And I would say we get under 50 nominations per year for Adult Learner of the Year, if you can imagine that. So I really want to encourage you, if you know of an outstanding adult learner, it's a great opportunity. It's $10,000 and lots of national recognition. As well, there's the Administrator of the Year, and our national award's been called the Emmys of adult education. So, you know, prestigious, high level, competitive. I just really want to encourage you to nominate folks today. We also have the State Innovator, the Workplace of the Year, and Advocate of the Year. State Innovator is if there's something exciting taking place at the state level, this is a great way to give them credit. The state agency or state office or project that's in place. Workplace of the Year, that's if you're working well with an employer. Advocate of the Year is my personal favorite, only in that it's new, and it was what propelled us forward to add $60 million to the funding pot. All those legislative alerts that went out, we had 86,000 plus contacts with legislators as a result of you in the field taking action on behalf of those alerts. So if you've been active and taking action for adult education, I would love to encourage you to ask someone to nominate you, because we don't accept self-nominations, but ask someone to nominate you for the $2,000 award for that. Also, we have an adult learner membership option, which is completely free. So all of you who have programs out there, this is a great way to onboard your adult learners free of charge for this year. They get insurance options such as life insurance valued at $60,000 for free for 2 years, plus the option to be nominated for the Adult Learner of the Year and many other benefits. We'll also have a student voice strand at our conference, so it's Adult Learner strand led by and for adult learners, a student ambassador pre-conference at our conference, as well as 36 other strands. So this will take place March 31st to April 3rd in New Orleans, Louisiana. Our mini grant winners have been announced. And as I mentioned, there's 36 strands is what I need to update this. everything from CTE, workforce, WIOA compliance, and on the list goes. So if it's taking place in the field, we have a strand for it at our conference. And finally, I just want to mention that we have a national level journal. It's a peer-reviewed practitioner journal, very, very popular in the field, and it's free to you as our member. So go to coabe.org for more details. So with that, I'm now going to turn this over to Dan Griffith from Essential Education. Dan?
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks so much for the opportunity to sponsor these events, the webinars, and some of the other sponsorships we do with COABE. We love working with the organization and all the great things you're doing in adult ed. Over the last few weeks, as we have done these various webinars, we've tried to align our 2-minute advertisement here with whatever the topic was. And since this is the final one, I thought it'd be good just to do a quick overview of all the products that we offer, so you have an idea of the suite of products that Essential Education brings to the adult education market. We've grown rapidly over the last 4 or 5 years especially. I think we've invested pretty much every red cent that we've made back into the company to create new products and to fill voids in adult education. So of course, we have kind of our flagship programs, the HSE Academies, GED, HiSET, and Task Academy. If you buy one, you get all of them. So if you're in a state that has multiple tests, or you deal with students coming from other states and needing parts of other tests, it's a great advantage to have access to all 3 of those. We have our Adult Basic Education Academies. We just launched our Table 11-12 Academy last summer, and we still have our 9-10 Academy up, and the CASAS Academy, which will be updated as soon as Octay approves the new CASAS math test. We have just launched a new TABE or ABE workbook series, levels E through A, starting really at a 2nd grade level and going all the way up. It's all correlated to the college and career ready standards. And it includes a virtual tutor that lets you work in the print material, but then access the online lessons that align with it. It's really a slick way to do blended learning. We also have what we call essential skills courses: computer essentials, work essentials, and money essentials. These are kind of life skills. Each one prints certificates so that students can have a certificate of completion at a, I think it's silver, gold, or platinum level, to talk to employers about their skills that add to their workplace effectiveness. We have an exclusive partnership with ETS to bring their official practice test for the HiSET in online format. And then we have 3 courses for educators under professional development. One is reading, identifying and remediating reading skill difficulties, one on motivating the adult learner, and one on blended learning in adult education. And those are $15 per teacher, per course. There are 5 hours roughly of instruction for the teacher. You can monitor their time spent in the course, how well they're doing on the individual lessons, and teachers have access to it continually. So we find most teachers, it would be 5 hours to go through the class specifically, but then they come back to it and we'll spend anywhere from 5 to 15 hours in an individual course, coming back and learning and mastering the content and applying it in their classrooms. We also have our College Essentials course, which is aligned with both the Classic and Next Generation Accuplacer test to help students who have completed their HSE do well on their college entrance test, so they can move into credit-bearing courses rather than developmental education courses. And finally, our Dreamcatcher, which I think we showed last week, which is a career planning tool that's really exceptional. Starts with what a student's purpose is in life and helps them get a better sense of that, and then aligns that to the career clusters from ONET. So the whole suite together is Essential Education. We're looking at new products to work on in 2019. But I think collectively we've built a pretty good ship of products that can help you and your students be successful. So if you'd like any demos or access to any of those, I'll put in the chat box up here. Just email me at dan@essentialed.com, and I'll get you sent to the correct rep, and we'll get you demos and an opportunity to look at the programs. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Sharon.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dan. And now I'd like to introduce the star of this show, if you will. Leicester Johnson is the Chief Executive Officer of Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter School. And I'd love you all to give her a warm welcome by putting your name and where you're dialing in from in the chat box, because we'll use the Q&A for questions. Leicester is an adult education provider working there in Washington, D.C. She joined Academy of Hope in 2006, so 12 years ago. During her tenure, the organization has grown to 2 locations, transitioned to an adult public charter school, and doubled the number of individuals earning a high school credential annually. Ms. Johnson is a founding board member of the Workplace DC and the DC Adult and Family Literacy Coalition. She holds her master's and an education specialist degree in transition special education from the George Washington University. She's also a certified vocational evaluator and has received numerous awards and honors, including the Georgetown University's 2014 John Thompson Jr. Legacy of the Dream Award, 2015 Amtrak Pioneer Award, and the 2011 Meyer Exponent Award. So a lot of awards there. And Leicester, we're just so grateful to have you on board here, and we know this will be a wonderful presentation. So everybody, welcome Leicester Johnson.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you. It's so great to be here. I'm really excited to hear that we've got lots of people interested in blended funding. I'm also a little anxious, too. It's the last one, and of course, you got to clear it out with a bang, right? But what I'll do is, I'll just share my experience. As I was sharing with Sharon earlier, I'm an educator, and I'm all about working with adults and helping them to improve their skills. And, getting into this whole idea of how do you pay for this was something that was not readily on my radar. So it's a new experience for me. I've done some trial and error, but I think we've gotten to a place with some experiences that I think I can share that would be helpful with you. So why don't I just jump right in, and I think we'll have some time for questions as well. Just want to make sure I check in, Sharon. Is my screen visible? I lost myself on the video, so.
I can see you. I cannot see your screen, so you're going to want to share your screen.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me go back again. Okay. Sorry, everyone. I was doing really well until I got nervous.
You're doing great.
Okay. So I can see my screen. Okay. I will be right back with you. Just a second here. So, right, I'm going to escape.
So while she's doing that, people are just putting their names and where they're coming in from in the chat box.
Okay. All right, share. All right, share. Is it looking better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. This is one of probably my worst fear here. It's like, make sure that you do the technology right. Okay. All right, are you seeing?
Yes.
Okay, and you've got a full screen?
Well, it's that preview screen that we were looking at before.
Okay.
But I think you had to go up, if I recall, you went to display settings right there.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah. There, yep, perfect.
Okay, all right, now we're going.
So, Leicester, I will be here, but I'm going to stop my video and mute myself, but I'm here to support you if you need help.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so let me go back to where we are. So there's our opening screen here. Again, as I mentioned, I've been here for 12 years. When I got to Academy of Hope, to be frank, our budget was a little under $600,000. And as an educator, I mean, we were doing really well, but I found myself in the struggle of constantly asking things like, do I pay for a teacher or do I pay for a set of books, which is something an educator does not want to spend their time doing. So, really becoming a fundraiser very quickly, I had to jump right in, and I've got some experiences that I'm happy to share with you. So going forward, so a little bit about Academy of Hope. Academy of Hope was founded in 1985 by Maria Hilfiger and Gail Boss, so two women who were on a mission to really help individuals to change their lives. They had been working with a nonprofit, another nonprofit in Washington, D.C., and quickly discovered that the individuals that they wanted to help become employed did not have the basic skills that they needed. So the reading, writing, and math, and many lacked the high school credentials. So they started Academy of Hope with a very, as our founder would say, not much of a vision, but certainly wanting to do good in the world. So Academy of Hope. So we've got 2 locations in Washington, D.C., one in Ward 5 or Ward 8, for those of you who might know the area. And our core services, we do your adult basic education, all the way up to GED preparation, of course. We offer the National External Diploma Program. We also have a college prep and transition program where we partner with the local community college, where students are able to either dual enroll, so as they're close to passing their high school credential, getting their high school credential, they can also enroll at the local community college and earn up to 10 college credits. We also have an articulation agreement with the local community college for 2 courses that we offer on-site, and students are earning 4 college credits with us. We do digital literacy, very beginning technology skills, all the way up to the Microsoft applications. And then what's very new, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about what we're doing, most recently we started to offer 3 career pathways options, or integrated education and training for our students. And they're in 3 areas: hospitality, office administration, and very soon healthcare. So those are very new that I'll share a little bit more about. We also do career counseling, and we've got comprehensive case management or wraparound services. And as you can see in the left, we've got, just the demographics of our population. Our average student is 40 years old, but we do have a opportunity youth group, 18 to 24, which makes up about 14% of our student population. We're largely African American and largely women, and we do tend to see that sort of go back and forth depending on the economy. When the economy is going really well, it appears men tend to become employed a lot easier, and then when the economy, of course, isn't doing well, we get more of an even split of our students. The majority of our students are low income and are living about 200% below the poverty level. So we've got a group of individuals who have high needs, need lots of services. Average grade level in reading, they're coming in about a 6th grade or below. And then math, that's a 4th grade or below. Most of our learners are tracking on numeracy. So numeracy is the lowest area for most individuals coming in. And most of our classes, our lower level classes, are filled with adults, and it's really adding and subtracting of whole numbers. So you can understand the need there. So that's a little bit about who we are. We transitioned to a public charter school in 2014. And so why did we do that? There were a number of reasons that we wanted to move to a charter school, but the primary reason was funding. As we were starting to look at our program and looking at where we are in terms of relevance, we were not offering workforce program. We were your workforce programs. We were your classic adult ed program, reading, writing, and math. We did some digital literacy, and then we would hand off to a workforce provider or a community college. to pick up the workforce training. And as we've all learned over the years, adults can do more than one thing at a time. And in fact, what we know about adults entering sort of these integrated programs, they actually do much better. And we've seen that in our technology classes. Adults who were, somewhere around the ABE 3 level, once they got into the technology, the Microsoft classes, we also saw academic gains while their students were with us. Without getting too far in the weeds about IET programs or the sort of IBEST programs, we also know that you have to do a lot of on-ramping for your lower level students before they're able to fully benefit. National move towards integrated education programs. There were also major changes to the GED that if you're an adult ed, you're fully aware of what those changes were. And we were looking at how do we get to a place where we're able to meet all of these demands? How do we scale appropriately? When we did our strategic plan and did a related budget, a 5-year budget aligned with that strategic plan, we saw ourselves having a gap of about $500,000. And so we lacked the income sources to be able to do what we wanted to do in this new strategic plan. And I think we realized that gap was much larger. So we made a tough decision to transition to a charter school because we knew through charter schools that there was a per pupil funding that we would be able to access that would really help us to really change our business model and to be able to provide the services that we wanted. So here's a picture before charter school, and I'll talk a little bit about what that funding looks like. Before charter school, we were 18 full and part-time staff. Honestly, if you pull out the interns, which are usually about 4 a year, we really were about 14 staff, and this is prior to 2014. We were largely a volunteer organization, and the organization was actually founded with volunteers, and we had limited support services for our learners. Teachers and volunteers were really handling those support services for our learners. So if housing fell apart, it was a teacher. If there was food insecurity, our teachers or volunteers would handle that. And then we were also in a very cramped facilities. We had 2 locations by then, but we were all really pretty much in basements of apartment buildings and sort of turning conference rooms into classroom space. We, in 2014, well, actually applying for a charter school, we started the work in 2012, the fall of 2012. So doing the due diligence, having conversations. So really opening as a charter school took us about 2 years to do that, from writing all of the pre-work to writing the application and going through the hearing. So it was, we thought this was the easiest route to the finances, but that's really doing that with a wink, that it was really a very tough process to get through this charter school application process. And as you can see where we are today, we're currently 52 full and part-time staff. We've got a number of adjuncts on staff with 40 to 45 active volunteers. Still, one of the things that was really important to us was that we were able to keep our volunteer core, and really there was a place for volunteers at our school. We were also able to expand our services. The academic support team, we were able to bring on an entire student support team, which is now up to 7 staff at 2 locations. We have a day and evening case manager and other support services. We also, as a result of becoming a charter school, we brought on an entire data and accountability team, which has really helped us to strengthen our data and performance management activities. And that was also very much needed as a charter school, given all of the accountability requirements that we have as a charter school. So our current budget is $6.1 million, and we're in over 41,000 square feet across 2 locations. In 2016, we were able to purchase a facility for our main office, and we have a long-term lease in our Ward 8 location, which is about, actually we've outgrown that space and are looking for a new facility for that site. We continued to fundraise. That was really important to us, but one of the things that we did as we transitioned to charter, we outsourced our fundraising, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened with doing that. So here's what our funding looked like. So we've braided funding. So if you look to the right, our private funding, we continued to do that. Our fundraising through foundations, individual donors, events, just a real mix of fundraising efforts. So if you see $1.3 million raised, that was our annual budget. We've only gone up a little bit. And some of that, I think, had to do with when we made the transition to a charter school, we outsourced all of our development activities because we had the resources, at least the foundational resources we needed. And what we were really trying to do during those first 5 years is to just maintain. But there were some consequences for doing that. Government funding. So as you can see, government funding, either through the per pupil funding, we got $3.5 million to cover the core instructional programs. 1.2 million, there's a facility allocation, but this is all unrestricted money. Even though they separate it when it comes across, you know, when you're receiving the money, it comes over as a lump sum and it's unrestricted money. Ideally, you want to use the facilities dollars for facilities, but you can, you know, use all of that money for programming services. So there's nothing that keeps you from doing that. It's unrestricted funding. You know, the good news about it is that it's predictable quarterly payments, and the business model, of course, is based upon the number of students you enroll. The more students you enroll, you know, you can really do the calculations pretty easily. 500 students equals this much, 600 students equals this much. And that has made for, I guess, managing sort of a budget a little easier. We also have a WIOA Title II grant, which is $360,000, which is restricted funding. It is on a reimbursement, like most of other government grants. And this funding has also been very helpful in that, at least locally, we've been able to get continuations for 2 years or more. While there isn't a guarantee that they won't recompete the funds, what's happened in the district, at least, if you've gotten one of the local WIOA Title II grants, likely that funding is good for about, you know, 3 to 4 years before they recompete the funds. And then we also do some local government funding through our Workforce Investment Council, and some of this money with the new grant locally was combined, and that's on a reimbursement. We also had an earned revenue stream. We have a full service vocational evaluation unit. We were doing some of the local vocational evaluation for disability services and also for public schools. Last year, that funding source has shrunk a bit, but it really was a pretty robust funding source for us. So that's our braided funding. We've got government and private funds, and we've been able to use those resources to do some really great things for the school. I'll talk a little bit about just the primary funding. You know, prior to becoming a charter school, we had very little government funding. So we are largely government funded when you look at our funding streams. The charter school, of course, accounts for the greatest percentage of our funding as a charter school, greatest percentage of our government funding. And we are braiding our government sources. We've got diversity among our government funding, with plans to diversify more by connecting to other agencies that need to provide literacy services or adult ed services for the individuals that we're servicing, providing services to. And then we are really working hard to rebuild our individual donor base and exploring corporate funding opportunities, and I'll talk to you a little more about that. We did lose individual donors and some foundations. As you know, charter schools are highly political, but also our individual donors thought we didn't need their money anymore. And we've had to do a lot of work convincing them that we still need your resources, that we have the charter school funds in the District of Columbia do not cover 100% of the needs that we have. We actually get 89% of the per pupil funding that the K-12 schools get. We also are not eligible for a lot of the Title I funding that K-12 schools get. And I'm happy to tell you a little more about what those are. So we are supporting, because most of our adults have aged out of special education. We do not get special education funding, so we are providing those services, and we have to fundraise for that. So while we are absolutely in a much stronger position than we were before going charter, we still fundraise to do some of the essential support services that we need, but also to be able to innovate as a school. So I wanted to share this slide with you. This is from Bridgespan, and this is in reference to what we've learned. So, you know, when I first started fundraising, you know, the big thing was diversify, diversify, diversify. The more you could have your funds spread out against, you know, your individuals, your events and grants, the better off you were. Well, what we're learning, and this is from Bridgespan, and the original article was in the Nonprofit Quarterly, that really that's not as accurate as, you know, as we've been told. That's not 100% true. In fact, for organizations that are looking to grow and scale, they have focused on a primary funding type. So 70 to 85% of the resources are coming from a primary funding type, with 1 or 2 secondary funding types. So what does that look like? You know, for us, when we look at our funding and what our funding mix looks like, let me switch here. Our funding right now is largely government. So charter school funding accounts for 80% of our funding, and that's local government per pupil. When you combine that with our WIOA funding that we're getting, which is right now about 5% of the total pie, and then some of the local government funding, we're about 89% government funding. Now, that's scary for me, given my training over the years about, you know, how you should diversify so that you can protect yourself against you know, hits in different areas. But it is, you know, the research is saying that this is how organizations are able to grow and to scale their work. Our private funding right now is a little lower than where I want it to be. We're about 11% of our budget, and that's coming through individuals, our corporate grants, and then our foundation funders who've stuck with us through this transition to charter school. Just to share with you a little bit, prior to charter school, making the transition to charter school, we met with every single one of our foundation funders to tell them that we were going to transition, that we were going to apply to become a charter school, because it was such a political issue. I will tell you that we applied back in 2008, and we did not get to charter the first go around. And when we started meeting with our donors, particularly our foundation funders, they were not thrilled with the idea, and many said that they would not fund us. When we went back in 2012, it was very different. I think because people have become more educated about just how low the funding is for adult ed and what we're really trying to do to help folks, they thought it made great business sense. I like to say either I was much more convincing this time, or, you know, we're doing a good job as adult educators sort of educating the public about why we should make investments in adult education. But it was very well received. So we've kept the majority of our foundation donors through this transition. What we've seen over the years, we've seen the greatest decline in our event revenue, in our individual revenue, we've also seen, and we've seen a slight decline in our corporate funding. So prior to charter, events accounted for 5% of our revenue. Individuals were 8 to 12% of this pie, and our corporate donations were at 4%. So, you know, making the transition, we took a hit on some of our fundraised dollars, but, you know, we're certainly in a much stronger financial position. The other thing is we outsourced our fundraising. Prior to becoming a charter school, Academy of Hope was very high touch with our donors. And when we outsourced it, we lost something with that. And so last year, you know, I just made a decision working with my board to reinvest in our development program, and we're already starting to see the benefit. But the lesson that we've learned just through the research that we're seeing now is that, you know, let's not try and do everything. If your organization is fundraising and if you've done an event, you know how much work it takes to plan an event and to really get real revenue from that. So we're being really strategic and looking at where the opportunities for us to grow for our secondary funding. I have a second pie here just to show you a little bit. I pulled out the charter school funding, and then you can see really what our funding mix looks like without the charter funding. So individuals make up about 44% of our fundraised dollars, with actually we've seen a slight growth in our corporate grants and corporate contributions. Because one of the things that we're finding with our corporate donors is that they're really looking to make an investment in an organization that has long-term sustainability. And so they're not really afraid of funding us as a charter school because they see that we've got at least a 15-year contract with the city, you know, barring that we don't, you know, fail on performance, that we will be around and we've got a steady funding stream that can support the work that we're doing. And you can see grants and foundations, and this was just about what it looked like before we made that transition to charter school. Foundation grants made up about 41% of our funding, and with our OSSI or WIOA funding, 27%. So this is what it looks like, you know, from our fundraised dollars at Academy of Hope, pulling out, of course, the charter school. So how do we use this money? Skipping here. So hopefully this makes sense. So these are sort of the major components of what we do at Academy of Hope. We've got our academic instruction, our core academic instruction, and we're using the charter school dollars to fund that. It covers teacher salaries, it covers textbooks, it covers all of the academic components of the work we do, and some portion of our student support services. We also, for Academy of Hope, at the ABE 1 through 3 levels, we're doing a lot more career exploration. So those are integrated into our programs, and we're offering that to our learners. But we're using the core charter school funding to cover the majority of our teacher salaries and anyone who's having some direct touch with our students. Our WIOA Title II funding really goes to help support our integrated education and training. And these funds, we reapplied last year in 2017 and really starting to build out our integrated workforce programs with occupational skills training and hospitality, healthcare and office skills training, doing a robust career development program, and the worker competencies, or what we've generally called soft skills, which we know aren't soft skills, really using that funding to integrate that, but also able to get the academic instruction covered, because it doesn't cover 100% of that. So we're able to sort of leverage these funds to cover some of the key pieces of the work that we're doing. And then, of course, the local workforce dollars are really covering sort of that end goal, which is getting people into employment and the contextualized experiences for our learners. It's challenging. You know, one of the things that we're finding is that really making sure that the performance requirements align so that you aren't doing triple and double tracking of student performance in very different systems. They're relatively aligned on the government funding, but sometimes the way something is calculated in one area is not quite the way it's calculated, so you look different on depending on which grant you're working from. And we use our private funding to cover our general operating, some of the support services needs we have. Also, any new programming, it's an opportunity to use that foundation funding, which we know isn't always very long-term, to help cover new programming that we have or that we're interested in trying with our learners. And then it also fills the gaps. Where these funds aren't able to cover, we're able to use the private funding to cover the gaps. There was one other point I wanted to bring up, the funding, the challenge of having these performance outcomes that aren't quite aligned with each other. I really can't express to you more how important it is, because you will find yourself in a sea of different performance outcomes. Now, we've got an accountability and data team of 3 people right now who spend a lot of time making sure that our tracking and that our performance management is tight and aligned so that we know how we're doing across each of these funding areas. But that is one of the trade-offs. And sort of blending all of these different fundings. The goal is to try and get them as closely aligned as possible. So how are we doing? Since becoming a charter school, but also blending these different resources, the one thing that I do tell people, resources do matter. So often when you're doing fundraising, or particularly sometimes with our corporate partners, like, what else can we do? It's not all about money. But what we've learned, money plays a big role in your ability to adequately serve adult learners. So over the last few years, we have seen significant progress in our work. We are Tier 1 or high-performing charter. We got there this year, and we're really excited about that. That's a local rating of public charter schools. So Tier 1 schools are your high-performing charter schools. We saw significant growth in students' academic performance. Progress is up 46%. We're using the COSTAs to measure those skill gains, and that's where we are now. We've got an 85% pass rate on the GED. And that was not where we were prior to becoming a charter school, prior to 2014. Graduates up 42%, and then we're seeing our employment rate increase as well. That's still a hard area for us, but we've been able to bring on job placement specialists to help provide those services, either for the student who needs that right now job, but also tying employment to the career pathways that we're currently offering for our students. It's made a huge difference. It's meant a lot in management, but we are really excited about the future and where we're going. We've also recently become accredited through Middle States Association, and are really looking to build out our robust workforce programs and get those rolling strongly. We just are able to offer so much more to our students than we were prior to sort of being able to blend all of these fundings and being very strategic about how we, what funding we go after. So there are some cautions. I would say when braiding funding, the big piece is align performance outcomes across funding sources. Really looking at those funding sources. What are the outcomes? How do they align to our mission? How do they complement what we're currently doing? And right now, we look at the charter school as the primary funding source for us and our mission, and what are we trying to do, and how will these other dollars help us to achieve that better? Be careful of mission creep. I mean, I know this experience when I, when I first got to Academy of Hope, sometimes you just got to make the budget work. And you'd start little projects here and little projects there to really make that budget work. But we've gotten to a place now where we are being very disciplined about what funding sources we're going after, and we've said no. We have learned to say no to some of the large pots of money. We've found sometimes even, government money sometimes costs you a lot more to do than some of the foundation dollars. But because we're able to leverage our charter school funds and then bring in the WIOA funds to handle certain portions of the work that we're doing, it's a much better pot of funding for us right now. But getting really disciplined about saying no to money. And then finally, fundraising is an organization-wide effort. We just really needed to learn that, it's not just a development manager's job, that we all are fundraisers. And we're all really need to be thinking about how do we create strong programs for our students and how do we sustain these programs, because we really do feel that we have something of quality to bring to our students, and the need is so great in DC and of course across the country. But making sure that it is something that we're all invested in doing and not just a job of our development specialist. And she'll be very happy to hear me say that. So I will stop here. I've also put in just how you can find us, and learn more about Academy of Hope. But I will stop here and, start to take questions, because I want to make sure that we have time for that. So I've got a question here, which was, where were you prior to charter? We were a community-based organization. So we were an adult ed program. We were a 501c3. We still are a 501c3 organization, but we were, certainly, we were not a charter school, and we were able to get a lot more funding through the charter schools. So we are, for the curriculum, we have actually developed a lot more. We have a full service career assessment center. So the question is, what specific curriculum or material do you use for career exploration and soft skills? So we are using 21st century skills. So we integrate those into our career development courses, but we have a certified vocational evaluator on staff, and I'm also a certified vocational evaluator, and we've developed a course that really moves people through the stages of career development. And what we've done a lot more of with the career exploration is also aligning them to the career pathways that we offer and helping people to learn more about what career pathways, what does it mean to work in hospitality, what does it mean to work in healthcare, but really having it targeted to the pathways that we offer, but doing some general assessment of interest, skills, ability, and values, and integrating those into the course, and integrating the 21st century skills into our program. We're also working with a group called Ed Design, and we'll be doing some work with badging, so worker competencies, things like teamwork, communication, and really building into our programs badges for students at different levels to be able to walk away with something that shows that this person has mastered this particular soft skill. Then we have a question, what are the exact duties of your case managers? So our case managers really start to work right up front when students are coming in. So during our case management, during our intake process, they will do an assessment of self-sufficiency. So we're looking at housing stability, food, mental health, disabilities, a whole host of things. And then they'll develop a profile of that student. And then they triage our students based upon their needs. So anyone who's coming in at a high need or high risk of losing housing prior to starting classes, they're really going to start to work with them to stabilize them and get them housing prior to showing up for classes. They also work with students while in our program, as things, if you're working with a high need population, things do fall apart. And we really do work to try and get students to resources for housing, for food. We also are connected with the local food bank and offer a mobile market here, and we have a food pantry that's run by one of our graduates. We are incubating her here at Academy of Hope, and she provides staples throughout the week. Our mobile market runs once a month here at Academy of Hope, but we know that students get in trouble before the end of the month. But they are connecting our students to resources. They're also making sure, if it's someone who's coming in with mental health issues, that they're working closely with all of the supports that they have. Okay. A question. What would you recommend for an adult ed program to braid funding at a community college? What would you recommend for an adult ed program to braid funding at a community college? At a community college, because you are again, I'm not as familiar. Not sure if you're funding, how that's coming through. My hunch is you're receiving some of the Title II funding, that it would likely really looking at corporate and foundation funding. It's really hard, I think, when you're working under a larger umbrella of community colleges or a college, actually, because they have these large development departments. And I'm not sure how the money would flow. But if you are able to do fundraising outside of what the community college is doing, definitely looking at your local foundation dollars would be a good first start. Making sure, of course, that you're not competing with the larger funding priorities of the school where you are. Okay. Hopefully I'm answering these questions. Please shoot me more if I didn't answer them quite as well as you need me to. Who are you chartered under? In Michigan, it's difficult, and the state doesn't see adult education being able to go through a charter. Oh, yeah. So I have to say that we are in a really unique situation in the District of Columbia. In DC was actually the first to ever allow adult schools to be chartered. And it's been a long haul for other states to do that. There are states that right now strictly prohibit charter funds to be used for adult education. I would say if you're interested, if Michigan is difficult, if you could get in touch with some folks, particularly in Indiana, there is the Goodwill Excel Academies. The first one was in Indianapolis, and my understanding is that he did a lot of work working with their state legislator to get the laws changed and to make it possible to happen. It means that you'll have to do a lot of groundwork in getting things changed to have that happen, or working with your local government to do it. Locally, DC saw it as an opportunity, and they were really, one of the few things that, people miss about DC, that we were really progressive in that respect. There are 8 adult charters in the District of Columbia, with more coming on. I think whether the application cycle hasn't happened this year, but certainly they've been really good about approving strong adult ed charter schools in the district. But I'm happy if you'd like to chat offline or connect you to some resources. There are a number of, there's a little bit of a movement looking at charters as the route to go for funding adult ed. So it looks like those are all the questions that I see. I'm happy to take more. I've left my contact information here on the screen. So if you're interested, and if there's anything that I can share with you, I'm happy to do that. We're an open book. It's all about improving services for adult learners, for me, and also for Academy of Hope. So anything that we can share with you, we're happy to do that.
Fantastic. Well, Leicester, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all those who joined us here. Just by way of reminder, the certificate will come to you from Zoom in 24 hours, so you don't have to contact our info or support desk until after 4 o'clock Eastern Standard tomorrow if you don't receive it. But I wanted to say thank you again, Leicester, for your time. You did a fantastic job, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Okay, bye-bye.